Hey Helen, another video. This one, I'll walk through some of the layer styles with you and just kind of show you some of the things that you can do using layer styles. So I'll just kind of fill this background with white. And let's just use a shape to be an example. So over here, our shape tool, if we click and hold, we'll get these different options. We kind of talked about that earlier. Um, I think maybe we'll use a custom option here just to see. Maybe it'll give us uh, more to work with. Let's just do the butterfly. All right, so in my case, if I hold the shift key down while I drag this out, it'll keep the proportions. If I let go, it'll kind of jimmy with the proportions. Last time I was there, yours was set up opposite of that, which makes it a little bit easier. So over here we have our colors. This is the foreground color. This is the background color. We can switch those, make this the foreground and the background. To change them, you just click inside the box, and of course you can change it and make it whatever you want. What else? In my case, so maybe I forgot to set the color, but I like the shape, it's good. I can always just go over here, change the color by use of a layer style. And so if inside of our layer here, select the butterfly, double click, and so we'll get this box full of options called layer styles. These are different things you can do to this layer to just make it stand out a little bit more. So let me just walk you through what these do. This bevel and emboss, if I click that, what you see is what it just is. It gives it a little bit of 3D depth, right? And so you can change the parameters and make it, you know, fit what you're trying to accomplish, right? So just soften it out, make it sharper, smaller, bigger. So that what it does is it gives you kind of this beveled look, as if it's an object sitting, and you can see like the light hitting the edges, right? There's that, and then the shadow on the bottom edges. You can change the direction the light comes from here. So you can see how now the light source seems to be coming from this side, and the shadows now are over here. So we change it in the reverse. So that's something that you can do as far as giving it a little bit of just interesting look. I find that when people first are starting off doing design, myself included, they just go crazy with this. And honestly, kind of the trends are moving away from that kind of design. Everything's more simple and flat, but just you can do it if you know it's there, and there's different options you can mess with. You can see how it changes it slightly, but that's something that you're able to do here in the layer styles to give it just some depth. Another thing, and those are options within the bevel and emboss. You can mess with those and try them out and do different things. The next one is the stroke, and it's basically a stroke is an outline. In this case, the outline is gray. Let's change it to a different color. So we'll make it green. And so now it's outlined in green, maybe a little hard to see since it's similar to blue. Why don't we do this? We'll change our background to a gray color. That way the other colors will stand out. So let's go back to stroke. Gray, make it white now. So now you can see there's an outline. Now there's three ways the outline, the stroke works. Well, one, it's inside of your design. So in this case, you'll see as I make it bigger, it just envelops more of the internal of your design. One is outside. So now the stroke moves outside of the design, and so it doesn't affect or change the size of your design at all. Or you can do center, which it does a little bit of both. It's on the outside and the inside. So you can see, excuse me, and it grows both ways. Generally, depending on what you want to do, in a case like this, probably working on the outside would be the best. But you can see now you have control. You can make it as big or small as you like. You can adjust that just simply by typing in a number as well. Slider's a little bit more simple. And of course you change the color here. Simple as that. You can change it from a color, you can change it to a gradient. So now you have a black to white gradient, and you can see what that has done, the outline. Not the shape itself, but the outline now has a gradient around it. And you could, similar to the bevel, that gives you a little bit of control. Do what you want. You can put a pattern. So here's a pattern there, and they have different options for patterns and things like that. So that's what's called a stroke. Then there's something called an inner shadow. So here we have a drop shadow, but this is an inner shadow. What this does is it puts the shadow on the inside of the image. So now you, I can leave the stroke there. Now you can see it looks as if like there's a cutout, and now you're looking through kind of a hole in a page, and that's kind of a neat effect. It works pretty neat, and so you change the angle of the shadow, the light source, kind of give it some, different things. And so you can affect the distance of the shadow, make it look like a deeper, shallower. The choke size, generally you want to just kind of work on the lower end of the choke. I usually keep it down to 0. The size of the shadow, you can see it kind of gives it more of a faded look. And so that's all, here's very sharp. Here it starts to blur out a little bit, like what you would expect a shadow to do. You can change the contours of the shadow. Not a lot of need to do that usually. You can change the opacity of the shadow. You make it very dark, or you can make it very, very faint with that tool there. And so the inner shadow is a way to kind of make it look as if that shape is cut out of a shape above it, when in reality, if we're looking at our layers, the shape is actually above the gray layer. So it really gives you some freedom to kind of create something interesting and cool. So that's the inner shadow. Inner glow, similar. It puts like a glow on the inside of your shape. And again, it's just a way to kind of create just a different effect. I don't use that too often, but it could come in handy. So the inner glow, and you can adjust the colors like pretty much everything else. Sometimes they won't show up because they're blended differently, and there's all these different blend modes. And so if you choose a color that doesn't show up, like in this case, the red doesn't really show through, but if you could change the opacity and it might show up a little bit, but it's being kind of blocked out by this blend mode, and so you can just change the blend modes, and that makes the shadow interact with the color of the shape itself. So you can see there. So that's the inner glow. Almost looks like a shadow now. So it gives you a little bit more freedom. Satin, I never ever use this, and so it just kind of makes it look almost as if it was like fabric, I guess. Kind of, I don't know. I've never had much use for that. Color overlay, simply to change the color. Okay. Gradient overlay. In this you could make something interesting looking by making a gradient. So in this case it's blue and black, but you can change that by either picking a different option or just changing the color here. So if I highlight this one, it gives me that purple. I can change that to blue, and then I can grab that one and change it to green, and then I could bring them closer together, have a controller for that, and then you could change the angle of the gradient this way, the scale, right? So anyway, that's That's the gradient. And then there's different types of gradients. Like the radial means it's kind of coming out from like a circle from the center. Angle is coming out from an angle and then like slowly working its way around to the blue that way. The reflected, it kind of just puts the one color in the middle and fades out from both sides. The diamond is similar to the radial, but in a kind of a diamond shape. So those are some things you can do. So gradient, pattern, you can choose a pattern to go in there, and there's all kinds of, you can add patterns and pick different things like that. So there's that. The outer glow, similar to inner glow, but this time it's on the outside. And so let's pick red, like a red, and see what happens. Size. So this kind of gives you that glow. Let's maybe pick a color that's similar. And maybe go darkened. So now it's similar to a shadow, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility than a shadow, because you can do these different layer style, or these different blending modes. And then of course the shadow. For some reason mine's set on this weird red color. And then the shadow, the distance, similar to the inner shadow, works. Same thing, light source changes, same stuff, but this time it's on the outside. So that's those are the layer styles, and you can experiment with those, and this would be a way to kind of get your focal point to kind of move to the front of the design, right? And become the thing that people are going to notice first. So that's just kind of a quick walkthrough of the layer styles and how to get there. Again, you just double click to the right of the layer and you can get this dialog to come up, and you can start going to town. Now, I think I showed you before. Let's say that you like the layer styles here, but you're going to be incorporating other elements and you want them to carry over. So we can do something like this. Okay. So say I want those layer styles to show up here. It's very simple. I can right click on the layer that has the effects that I want and just copy them here, and then go to the layer that I want them to be moved to, right click again and choose paste, and now they will have the same layer styles. So in this case it's a stroke and a drop shadow, and if I wanted to match the colors, I can come here, and when I'm working with the font, the colors are right here in the character window panel. Click that, sample the color, boom. So again, some other things that you can do. You'll probably do a lot of that. Okay, now remembering arranging our layers. In this case, maybe we want the butterfly to go over the text, and so it'd just be a matter of arranging it within the text, the layer panel here. So that's an example of how you would go about doing that. Now, sometimes you're working and you end up with a lot of layers. So let's create a lot of layers real quick. And maybe it's just confusing, you have so much. And you can group layers by doing this. There's this little folder here. And you would click that, and it gives you this folder, and you can take whatever layers you want, put them in the same folder, and then they're all grouped together. So now I have all of these butterflies in this folder, and they're all grouped together, and they kind of get out of the way. Once I have them the way I want them to be, I can put them there, and now I can actually manipulate them as a whole, right? I can change the size of all of them at once, and that kind of thing. And then, but keep in mind that if you do that, it's still subject to the order of your layers. So right now they would be on top of everything, but if I move this whole group, they're going to be beneath it, right? And so just kind of keep that in mind as you're organizing your layers in these groups, that you want to put the elements in in the group that are going to be in the same order that you want them to be. So, for instance, you could put all your text in one group because you know the text is going to be on the top, or it's going to be in the middle of your design. You can put all the elements that are going to be beneath the text in one group if you like. But that's just a way to kind of organize your layers if it makes it easier for you. You don't have to, obviously, but just I didn't know if that was something that you knew about. So those are some examples of things that you can be thinking about when working in Photoshop.